Live? Yep. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight here to discuss our Parks and Recreation Master Plan update here with the City of Huntington Beach. I'm joined by our Deputy Director, Ashley Wysocki. Again, I'm Chris Lama, Director of Community and Library Services. And we have with us tonight our partner from RJM Design, Zach Meeting. That said, if this is the first time you're joining us, just a little bit about what we're doing through this process here as we're reaching out to the community to involve you all in really updating our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which was approved in 2016 by the City Council with the direction to update in 5 years. So here we are already 5 years later, working with the team and with the community to really just continue to do some future planning for parks development and programming, really hearing from the city and the community on what your needs are and how we can help facilitate those in future planning. So feedback is really important, and we've got a lot of great survey information that Zach's going to go over in a little bit here. But a lot has happened over the 5 years. We've tackled a lot off of our list from 2016, and some needs have changed, and we're looking to address those moving forward. So that said, I'll turn over to Zach to talk a little bit more about the process.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And you're right, we had a great turnout in this first workshop process, this first virtual town hall process. And the entire Park and Recreation Master Plan is actually set up in 5 stages. And what you see here is the inventory of existing conditions, which we've already gone out and collected information on. And right now we're in the second stage, which is the extensive community outreach engagement process. So we'll be going to the community in a number of different ways through virtual town halls. We'll also have some commission meetings and council meetings as well too. And then there's also the feedback button on the website. So at any point in time, if you've missed some of the survey information or a workshop, a virtual town hall, you can still go onto the website and hit the feedback button and share your comments with us directly. So at any point in time, please share that information and let us know what you think. The final steps then, after we've collected all the community engagement information, is really the needs analysis, where we dive in and we look at common threads that may have come up among all of the outreach efforts. So that way we can see those needs from the entire community start to develop over the entire process and see really what comes to the top of the surface. We're going to start tonight by sharing some of the information we collected on workshop 1. And then at the end of the needs analysis, we go through the recommendations, where we provide a roadmap, completed the roadmap for the future on what needs to be done here in Huntington Beach, what needs to be continued, what might need to be improved upon, what might need to be modified. And then last, which is one of the more critical components too, is looking at the funding and implementation. How do we pay for it? All right, now we know what we want. Where are we going to get this money from and how do we do that? So our timeline really, as you can see here, this timeline is also on the website, but we're right there at that orange star, if you will, by that Zoom meeting for our workshop number 1. And the next few months, we're actually going to go through all these different community outreach engagement processes. And what we have coming up after this meeting is really our multimodal phone survey. So if you do get a phone call or a text or an email, make sure you participate in that as well. So that one will be coming up following this meeting. After that, we'll have another series of outreach events throughout the timeline. And then hopefully concluding by the end of the year is our target date, really to finish this project and come back to the community with the final results. What I'd like to do is share a little bit going into this survey. Before we share the responses, I want to talk about what we got out of this. You can see from this map, we heard from the entire community geographically, all across the community. The map on the left, the dots on the screen there really represent each survey that was turned in. And what we had, a survey open from June 24th to July 8th, we collected over 124 surveys. We had some paper surveys for a total amount of 138 completed surveys. And that gave us great information for our first workshop. Now, as I mentioned, this isn't the end. So we're going to have a lot more participants as we continue on through it. But with that information completed, we also see a good geographic distribution. That's important to make sure we're hearing from the entire community, not just one side, and the north side of the community, the south side, or the east side, but everybody across the community. And we hope to see this distribution continue as we move through the process. The first question coming into it, before we even get into the first question, we asked a little bit of background about people. And what we had found was when we asked how long you live here in Huntington Beach, this is some important information because we tie it back to the demographics, the data. And what we found, the participants of this survey have lived in Huntington Beach for an average of 25 years. It's kind of exciting because I look at this data and I get really close to the community when I see that people have lived here for more than 54 years. that's exciting to know that this is home for a lot of the community members. People have been here from 14 years, some lived here 27 years up to 40 years, but you have some long-term residents who have been here for a long time. They love to live, work, and play here in Huntington Beach. And that's exciting to get to know the community as we lead into this process. And in fact, the first question really revolves around what are the most important community characteristics that make this city of Huntington Beach a great place to live, work, and play. And when we reached out to the participants in this on the survey, we wanted to get back the important things to them. When we asked this question, we want to know what is the best here? What makes Huntington Beach Huntington Beach? And in order to articulate this in this presentation, we created this word cloud here. And I'm going to articulate a few of the things that we heard in terms of cleanliness and safety. That came up the most when we started to dive into this data on all of the responses. Elements such as reference to parks, references to the beaches, the trails, well-maintained open space came up quite a bit throughout our data analysis on the responses. We also heard about the beach. Of course, everybody loves the beach. We all love the weather here. We can't complain about that, but also the accessibility to it and the climate in the surrounding area. Another fun thing that we heard about this was the community. This is important because it goes into a lot of the responses on family, the friendly atmosphere, making, that whole community feeling of being together. There was a strong component that came through on a lot of these services, on a lot of these responses of there's a sense of community feeling. And then open spaces, the green spaces, natural trails, turf and trees, native plantings came up through quite a bit of the responses as well that people really enjoyed as part of the most important community characteristics here in Huntington Beach. And then another element that came up was programs. We heard a lot of programs, various programs individually, some more than others, but the intent mostly on it was people love the programs here. A couple elements that came up were junior lifeguards, senior programming, kids programmings. Those are elements that got repeated a lot. And I'd like to just read a couple excerpts from some of those that I found really kind of encompass this question here. Is one of the participants said, Huntington Beach has a lot to offer senior citizens, including the beautiful senior center, transportation, social services, housing, assisted living. It has been important to me and my parents, and now myself, showing that generational aspect. People live here for a long time. They love to continue to live, work, and play here in Huntington Beach. I'd like to do now for our participants online is if you're following along with us, I'm going to post a survey now on here on these topics that we just talked about. This first question, as we'll post here, what are your view of the most important community characteristics that we just talked about? So we've listed some here that we got from the survey, and I'd like to ask the community online right now to vote. Pick 3 of these and go ahead and weigh in on those. But while we're waiting, I'd like to ask kind of what are some of the upcoming programs the city will be offering. We heard about programs being that community characteristic everybody loves. What's upcoming?
So a lot of stuff. Actually, we're really excited as we're getting through some of the COVID restrictions and being able to open up certain programs. Before we get to that, though, I would like to let everyone know as you're filling out this first poll, towards the end of the night here, there will be a chance for some Q&A. If you have questions or comments, use the chat function through Zoom there, and we'll get through some of those questions tonight. If we don't have time for all of them, we'll be posting Q&A on the website as well. But back to the question, Zach, which I appreciate. I'll hand it over to Ashley Wysocki here to talk about some of the programs.
So as we open our doors post-COVID, we're seeing just an overwhelming response of participation in our programs. Many of our programs have been sold out. Our Camp HB is sold out. The Senior Center is hosting a concert next month, and in one day has nearly sold almost 300 tickets. So it's very exciting to see that sell out as well. And so we're just seeing just everybody wants to get back out, make new relationships, get back out into the community. And in addition to all of our traditional programs and services that we typically provide through hbsands.org, we're also really excited to work on our larger scale events.
Yeah, it definitely, as many of you know, we're an event city here, and we work with a lot of great event organizers. So coming up here later summer and the fall, we're going to see the U.S. Open coming back, U.S. Open of Surfing coming back in September, as well as the Pacific Air Show the first weekend of October. So really excited to see some of those events coming back for the community and for our visitors here.
Well, but let's take a look at some of those results before we move on to the next question. Let's see here. what we have, and I'm gonna have to lean in to see the screen a little bit more here, but we see, again, a lot of the parks coming into play here, and that open space, the sense of community I see coming up in there in the top, and clean and beach as well too. So, and this is just what one opportunity to weigh in. Again, if there are things that you feel are additional to that list, use the feedback button. We're still accepting comments, even though we're technically outside of this first workshop one period, because we do have to move through the process. That feedback button is always there on the website, and you can add any information to it throughout the entire process as we go through this master plan update. Let's go to the next question. The next question looks at, okay, what are some of the issues that might impact those important community characteristics that make Huntington Beach a great place to live, work, and play? And we heard a lot. We heard a lot of common elements in there. And again, as we dove through the data, we made sure that we looked at the elements and created this word cloud. And really what we found to go through some of these were homeless came up to a lot of the comments that we received in most cases on this subject. We also heard elements such as unsafe, related to crime, vandalism, graffiti. Now, I'm going to pause right there because we just heard that everybody loves the clean, safe parks in Huntington Beach, and that element of it as a great community characteristic. And reading through this data, what I'm starting to find here is that it is being impacted somehow. It is there and it's being impacted, and the community wants to preserve it. So it doesn't mean that one side is right or wrong, but the two sides of the coin exist, and they want to make sure that it's preserved as we move forward through the process, that the city hears it and we hear it and we talk about it as a subject, but it's still one of the great community characteristics. It's just, they want to make sure it stays one of those great community characteristics. And then we also heard elements such as overcrowding, housing, traffic, and that happens with any population growth. So does the parking starting to disappear with more cars, more people coming into town. And then we also heard condition of neighborhood parks. Playground equipment came up quite a bit on that, as well as various other amenities that can tend to happen in terms of a coastal climate that we have here. That does have an impact on a lot of our equipment. And then the last element that came up quite a bit was maintenance, and elements such as windblown trash. When trash cans get over full, sometimes that wind takes the trash and it makes more of a mess than really it is. But those are some of the elements. And as we go into it, I would like to bring in another guest panelist here to, or actually move on to some of the other elements, because I want to talk about the improvements we're going to be doing. But before I can talk about those improvements, we have to move on to the next question. Before we do, I want to take a poll, and that's where I was going earlier. Let's take a poll on those issues that we just talked about. So out to you, the audience, what are some of those issues or trends that may be negatively impacting those great community characteristics? And again, we've put up a poll with some of those elements on there. Take a minute to kind of look at those and vote on your three on what might be impacting the great community characteristics that make Huntington Beach a great place to live, work, and play. Now, I know there are a lot of elements that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, Chris, of things that are being worked on, things that are being maintained or replaced as we move forward. And a lot of those topics really come up in the next supporting role question. But what would we say about some of these elements here on the issues that kind of the city is already working on?
Absolutely. So obviously safety is always a high priority here, the highest priority here with the city. In terms of safety and, the topic of homelessness comes up quite a bit. What we'll be doing is partnering with our police department. We'll get a representative here at a future meeting so we can address some specific questions that the community might have. But in the meantime, we work with our police department, with our public works, to work on the cleanliness, to work on the security issues. Additionally, a bit in the longer term, we're actually working through a process here to procure services of a private company that can help us with some park patrol throughout the entire city that we're really excited about. We're hoping it's the first of a stage of maybe growing a park ranger program that can just have a little bit more eyes and ears throughout the operational periods of parks.
Excellent. Let's take a look at some of these responses here. I think we've given people enough time to answer those. And here we see a lot of those same lines of the questions that I had received earlier during the survey. I can see how the homelessness comes up to the top here. We also have following that the crime and the maintenance, similar elements that came up quite a bit as we heard through the survey itself, and then access to the trails, the schools, et cetera, those elements too, things that we'll be looking at as we move forward. And again, if there's something missing on this list, hit that feedback
Mhm.
button on the website. We want to know more. As Chris had mentioned earlier, we might bring some extra panelists on future meetings too, to have this two-way dialogue, to make sure we're listening to the community and we're responding as much as we can through this process. So that way we get everybody's questions and comments and concerns addressed in this process here. The next question, which I've been wanting to get to, because really this comes down to it, is, okay, we know what people like here. We know what some of those issues are. How are we going to fix it? What can we, the question we asked to the community, the last question during this survey was, what role can Community and Library Services Department play in addressing those issues and support the community characteristics that make Huntington Beach a great place to live, work, and play? What we heard, again, going through all the data, we created this word cloud to kind of illustrate some of these elements, was parks. A lot of the responses were well focused, meaning that parks came up a lot. So all of the data really is sound in terms of park focused responses, which is great. So when we look at them, homeless issues come up, continuing to address this element and help those who are less fortunate than us, and really look at different elements that we can do to collaboratively solve that issue. Clean, maintenance, improve the parks, create safe spaces by replacing some of those old elements. And I've been waiting to talk about that here in a little bit, and I know you guys have too, because there are programs that have been moving, and as we hear these things, it starts to really reinforce why the city is taking on certain programs and replacing certain elements and equipment. And through this process, we can take in that community input and really reaffirm why the city is making some of these decisions to move forward on projects. Also, create community. This was another great one, tying back into the first question, is people love that community feeling. The Community and Library Services Department can work with the community for education, communications, and partnerships to really reaffirm that value of community within the city, and then develop programs and improve facilities with trends. That kind of last sentence, that last word there is important, because with trends, it's not just doing the same thing all the time, but it's doing exactly what you're doing. The community sees that you can go back out through communication, through this process, and find out what the new trends are, find out what the community desires, wants, and needs are, and address those over time. And it sounds just like through this process, that's what we're hearing today, and that's how we're moving forward. So as we bring up the poll on this question, what are some of those improvements the city is working on that are in line with what we've just talked about?
So yeah, we could go on probably for a long time about improvements.
We have a time limit.
that are ongoing and future. But in addition to the 2016 master plan, some of the priorities there, in the meantime, there's an extensive inventory done of every single piece of playground apparatus throughout all of our parks throughout the city. So out of that, in 2018 came a city council approved playground equipment priority list. So there were 27 playgrounds throughout parks that were listed on that. And what we've done since then, since basically early 2019, is we've tried to embed at least 2 or 3 new playgrounds within our annual capital improvement program. So recently, we've done new playgrounds at parks like Labarde, Eder, and Bouchard, sort of in the south end of town, and up in the north end of town at Circle View Park, as well as Schroeder. We're extremely excited for some new playground equipment that was also approved by City Council that's going in at Central Park over near Lake Huntington by Kathy Mays, where there are currently just 2 playgrounds that are ready for replacement. It's a big project you'll see going over in the next few months here. And then, of course, we're working to redesign a couple of our larger community parks, Edison Park being one of those. We're working on a community input process for that. You can go to our city website to check that out, or on Facebook, you can go to bit.ly/HB Edison Park. That's bit.ly/HB Edison Park. Similar process to what we're doing here, but specific to Edison, to really just design a whole revamp for that entire park. So a lot of projects coming up this next year.
Wonderful. And it sounds like that's a lot in line with what we heard. And there were some of the issues when people talked about the equipment. Playgrounds came up quite a bit. So it sounds like there's already plans in place for that. They are moving forward, and just having that information. You can't do everything all at once. So I'm sure there's a process and a length of time that happens in order to change everything out. But it's having this dialogue with the community really helps make sure that we're on the right path as we move forward to Parks and Recreation development here in Huntington Beach. Let's look at the responses of this survey here. and see what came in. And what we found is addressing the homeless problem there, as well as looking at improving some of the maintenance and then improving parking in parks. So you see a lot of those elements coming in again at the height of the list from what we've heard on the community survey as well too. So, and I don't mean to be a broken record, but again, if it's not on this list, let us know. Go into the community the website for the project, hit that feedback button and give us your information. In fact, on that topic, I want to share just a few things as you're taking some Q&A here before we get into the questions from the community. If you do have any questions, make sure you type them into the chat. Our moderator will go ahead and share them with us. But I want to make sure everybody has, you can see on your screen right now, there's the website link to go to the project website. We'll plug there for our statistically valid multimodal survey. Please make sure if you're called, texted, or emailed to take that survey as well and join all the community members who are participating. If you're seeing this video on a recording because you missed the live session tonight and you didn't get a chance to ask your question, ask the question in the feedback button, and we'll make sure that as we go through the process, we can address everybody's concerns and make sure that we review everything as it comes in. A couple of interesting components here. We talked about the statistically valid multimodal website coming up. We have more virtual town halls coming up in August and September, but just even right now, our participation stats, the website has almost 1,000 unique views for the project itself. So people are participating, they're coming in, they're learning about the process. We had, as we mentioned, 138 surveys from this workshop alone. We're going to collect a lot more as we move through this. And we even have 24 feedback surveys from that feedback button. And just to talk about a couple of those, as we get some questions there, is one of them, why are there no in-person meetings? Somebody had asked that question on the feedback, said, how come we're not having in-person meetings? Well, as we go through this process, it's not that there's an exclusion of in-person meetings. It's our process now that we've developed over time actually involves a lot more outreach events. So we will have in-person and commission meetings and council meetings, chances for people to get together and share their feelings in person. Those opportunities are coming up, absolutely. But through this process, we actually are able to allow a lot more people to participate. Those who aren't making it tonight can still watch the recording of this video, as well as through the surveys, and take part through any point in time on their own schedule. So it's not that they're not allowed, we're just, they're not yet in the process. They're coming up as in the timeline. And a couple other questions that came up, Chris, some people had asked about the senior center, the vacant senior center on 17th Street. We heard some questions on that. Can you share a little bit on that?
Yes, in fact, that's a big upcoming project as well this year. So some of you online probably know that we did go through a public outreach process for that as well. And council approved a master plan to develop a passive park over there at the old Rogers Senior Center site. Including remaining the smaller former senior outreach building as sort of a community clubhouse to be used by some of the community, our American Legion Post 133. So we're really excited. In fact, we're partnering with RJM on the design for that project. We're just about at 100% design. So if all goes well, we're hoping to see groundbreaking by the end of this calendar year and early 2022, have a brand new park there at the Rogers Senior Center site.
Some of the other elements, what about Car Park? I heard that in some of the feedback surveys as well too.
Yes, Car Park is definitely, that was referenced actually in our 2016 master plan. And we actually have a grant application into the state as part of the Prop 68. We're hoping to get some dollars from the state. We have some conceptual ideas to redesign and rebuild Car Park. If awarded, we'll be definitely letting the community know and going through a process to rebuild that. If for some reason that's not awarded through the state, we are earmarking some dollars to actually start a design process for Car Park. It's a beautiful spot there, but it's definitely in need of some revamping.
Oh, absolutely. And then Ashley, as we pull up some of those Q&As, if we don't get to your question tonight, because we do have a time constraint, we will get to those. We'll post them on the website, our answers and responses, as well as if we didn't get to all the feedback questions tonight. I know we had 24 of them, but we'll continue to dive through those. We'll continue to post all the information we can on the website. So with that, Ashley.
Sure. So one of the questions was to remind everybody about the website, and that the website again is bit.ly/HB Parks Master Plan 2021. So please continue to visit that website and keep informed on the progress of the project. Another question was, I was just in Alaska, they had solar powered trash compacting trash receptacles. Could this be something looked into as an option for our parks and beach?
Certainly feedback that we can take and process.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, one of the best things I feel about traveling is seeing what other people are doing and finding some of those gems that some other communities might be doing or other countries might be doing that we could incorporate here. So comments like that are great because then we can explore them. We can look at them in ways that might be new opportunities for the community.
And another idea was requested if a spray ground, much like was installed by Laguna Niguel, be explored.
You know what, what I like to say is this is the point in time where we listen to all of the community voice. My role here is to make sure I capture the community voice. So a question like that would be, to me, somebody who's saying, hey, this is what I would like. And those are things that are valid throughout the entire process. I like to hear all the information. In fact, as we go through this, that's the most critical part, is to find out what are the wants and needs of the community. So elements like that, absolutely, please share those. Please share all of those ideas and desires, because we take those into account as we move through the whole process.
And piggybacking off of something you were talking about, Chris, there's a question in regards to Michael E. Rogers and plans with the bathrooms over there.
Michael E. Rogers and the bathroom. So I'm not sure what the specific question is regarding bathrooms, but there will be bathrooms in the interior of that clubhouse. Nothing designed for the passive park itself is a smaller neighborhood park. So typically we don't design in bathrooms into those types of parks, but for someone who's going to come in and utilize the clubhouse, there would be bathrooms available at that newly renovated building.
All right.
Hope that helps.
And I know we're not going to get to all the questions tonight, but again, feel free to type them in. And then as this becomes a video recording on our website, please hit the feedback button and you can always share. Zach, Chris, Ashley, I saw this during the workshop 1 feedback presentation. I'd like to ask this question, or I have this idea. I have this concept that I found at another park while I was on vacation. We love to hear those because that helps inform the process. Please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, get everybody involved. Make sure that they go to the website and they take part in this wonderful process of listening to the community to find out what the future of Huntington Beach Parks and Recreations will be. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in future workshops.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.